All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to your most productive lunch break this month. This 1 hour webinar is going to expand your mind. It's going to help you so much. We have taken time and energy to prepare some very helpful content for you, specifically for ECD center owners on the topic of HR in your center. And joining me today is two amazing women who have a commitment really to people development. They have a passion for people development. Firstly, Janice, who's an HR and labor law specialist and also a consultant. And secondly, Tracy Collins, who's Grow ECD's head of operation, also with many years of experience in HR. These ladies have hired, they've fired, they've developed, they've nurtured, they've been there, a shoulder to cry on, I'm sure. And they have lots of practical advice and support for us. And today we're doing something really big because we are launching the Grow ECD free HR Toolkit. How often in life is anything free? Well, this is. So let me share my screen as we get started and delve into the details. So this webinar is all about our Human Resources Toolkit, which is a guide to doing human resources right. I've shared with you some brief introductions regarding our amazing guest speakers who will be walking with us through the next few minutes until 2 o'clock. We'll introduce to you the free HR Toolkit. What is it? What does it look like? And how do you get it? And then we'll dive into 1 or 2 FAQs that we get very often from ECD center owners regarding HR. We wish we could answer all your questions, but in a 1 hour webinar, it simply isn't possible. So we've prioritized a few great questions for you. And then we'll look at how else can Grow ECD help you. Remember that this meeting is being recorded and that everybody who's signed up for the webinar will get the recording and these notes, these slides afterwards. So don't stress if you've missed it. Also feel free to use the chat section if you have any questions, comments, or contributions to make. So my name is Helene Brandt. I'm the marketing manager for Grow ECD, an amazing organization that wants to see 5-star early learning happening in every neighborhood. And we've developed a holistic model to help make running a sustainable preschool possible for everyone. And the way we do that is we connect your ECD business with tools, skills, resources, people, so that you can provide quality education while also running your preschool more sustainably. We've got a saying where we say, you need both your heart for children and your head for business if you want to run a sustainable preschool. So when we say heart for children, that's all about the fact that we have passion, we have commitment, and we have the resources and the ability to provide quality education in our classrooms. NCF-aligned programs, amazing teachers, and safe, nurturing environments that will make sure children thrive. But we can't have that without the head for business, right? Because when you're running a preschool, you'll know it's quite a complicated and a complex little small business. You are HR, IR, finance, admin, compliance, reporting, fundraising, marketing. And so today we're diving into the HR aspect of developing your head for business specifically. And if you have both of these things combined, it becomes really possible to run a sustainable ECD business that's not only cares for this generation, but for many generations to come. So I wonder, when you started your preschool, your ECD center, creche, daycare, I wonder if you knew that you were going to be the CEO, the chief everything officer, right? You are responsible for so much. Like I was saying, administration, finance, parent communications. Today, I'm wondering if you've had these types of HR questions. Okay, walk with me through these questions, see if you've had them. Do you know, does a lunch or a tea break count as working hours? I've wondered that. How do you even calculate the minimum wage that you need to pay? How do you plan annual leave for all your staff members? Maybe you're open during holidays, or maybe you're closed during, how do you do that? Or how much sick leave is someone actually allowed to take? I mean, surely there are some rules around this. What should you include in an employment contract to protect you and your employees? Maybe you have a volunteer working for you. Should you have a contract for them? What should be in that contract? How do you recruit the best person for the job? Should you maybe just take your sister-in-law because you owe her something? Or how does this recruitment thing really work? What should you even put in the job description? And then, or how do you manage poor performance? Or how do you manage late coming? If an employee has resigned, must you give them a certificate of service? Is that necessary? Or what happens if an employee has gone to the CCMA claiming her dismissal was unfair? What should you do to prepare? These are only a few questions that I have heard in the years that I've been working at Grow. This and many others. HR questions. I wonder if any of you have had these. And that is why we decided to put together a HR toolkit. We realized that most people who started a preschool didn't start it because they wanted to be this glamorous manager, managing people all the time. It really is because they have a passion for children and education. So the laws can feel a little bit complicated, but the point is still that if you are employing someone, even just one person, you have to comply with the law. The law applies to you. And we can't be ostriches putting our head in the sand. We have to know, right? And as we know, we can prepare ourselves better. So the HR toolkit is something that we've put together to, as simply as possible, explain the laws, give examples of how to apply those laws in the ECD context, to show you and give you access to templates like policies, procedures, or contracts so that you can create your own HR administration files and systems, and really to give you practical tools. It's been over a year's worth of work to put this together for you, and I think it's an amazing resource. And today we are launching it, and it is for free. And you can actually download it from our app. Let me check here in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of hellos. It's so nice to see everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. So if you are already using the free Grow ECD app, the good news is you can literally download this toolkit today from our resource center. It's in the center management section, and then you go to business information and support. Okay, so I'm going to ask Tracy to just help me walk through this. The toolkit is over 40 pages long, Tracy. I mean, it's quite a comprehensive little package. And you've explained to me that it's got two parts. What's happening in part one, and what can people expect in part two?
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, in part one, we've tried to sort of give an introduction to what this toolkit's all about, and why we've created the toolkit. And Helene has actually talked through that already. And we're really trying to introduce all the labor laws in South Africa, because as ECD center owners, yes, your budgets are tight. And as Helene says, you didn't actually start with thinking, oh gosh, now I'm going to have to be the chief everything officer, but that you are, and that you also have to comply with a number of laws in South Africa, and included in those laws are labor laws. So we give you a brief introduction into the specific labor laws in South Africa. We also explain what is an employer, what is an employee and an independent contractor, because you may not know the difference between them. And you need to know the difference because they all have a different sort of contractor. You're thinking, oh, well, I don't have to have a contract for somebody because they're not an employee. And then we will help you, because you may think, okay, I'm employed a foreign national. They're not an employee. If you've employed somebody and they're working for you, they are an employee. So those are the things that we would cover there. So also the types of employee, whether they're a part-time, a casual employee, or a full-time employee. The contract of employment, how important the contract of employment is, what should be in that contract of employment. What does common law say? So if I don't have a contract of employment, but I do have some agreement, what are the rights of an employee, and what are the obligations of an employer, and my rights as an employer under common law? Then we also talk about a very important bit of legislation, which is called the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, which is very important for ECD center owners because you actually need to comply with those conditions set out in the basic conditions. And that covers things like leave and sick leave, overtime. So those are things that are very, very important. Working hours is another one. Minimum wage, which I know for many of you is something that causes a lot of anxiety, but there is the Minimum Wage Act, and something that all ECD center owners need to comply with, all employers need to comply with in this country, and that you need to pay the minimum wage. And then also the UIF, the Unemployment Insurance Act, and how important it is to actually make sure that you register your employees and that you do actually pay contributions to UIF. So that's basically the sort of introduction to labor law that we introduce in part one. So lots of theory there, but also lots of sort of practical examples that we will give you in that one. Then we move to part two, and there we're covering things like recruitment, because you will know that if you have an IR problem, IR, we talk about industrial relations, when Helene has mentioned some of the HR questions that you would have, like, how do I handle poor performance and how do I handle late coming and things like that? Well, it's very important that you recruit the right person, because if you don't spend time and invest time in recruiting the right person, you could have lots of other problems down the line. So recruitment is very important. And then we also start talking about a little bit more of a law, which governs a lot on how you manage people in your ECD center, and that is the Labor Relations Act. So there we will be talking about termination, the different types of termination. I mean, is resignation a termination? Is if I retrench somebody, is that a termination? So those are the sorts of things that we'll be talking under there. And then we go into, how do I deal with poor performance? How do I manage that? How do I manage misconduct? How do I manage incapacity? Because the law actually gives us sort of what we call code of practice of what that is, and you actually have to comply with that code of practice in order to, if you dismiss somebody for misconduct or incapacity, to make sure that you've complied with that code of practice. Otherwise, your dismissal could actually be unfair. We also cover retrenchment, and then the CCMA, because some of you as ECD center owners may already have had the experience of going to the CCMA. So what actually happens at the CCMA? And then we talk about the importance of HR administration at your ECD center, and also around performance development of your staff, and what tools that GROW has to offer you to help you develop your staff and to performance manage your staff. Okay,
Thanks,
so that was that in a nutshell.
Wow, that's incredible. So to give you a quick summary, I think what was really helpful was when Tracy was walking through the toolkit with me, I came to realize that this toolkit really will help you understand the basic principles and the application of the labor laws in South Africa. And I think it's one of those toolkits that you need to print out and have in your file, in your office, so that when you have certain scenarios, you can go into it and check the section that you need to refer to on that day. So it really is like a little handbook, and you'll find advice and examples. Also, the toolkit will talk about certain resources and templates that we've designed specifically for ECD businesses, and that you can download from our app and personalize, make it your own. It will definitely help you prepare better and prevent many issues. I think if you follow some of the advice in this toolkit, you will prevent a lot of headaches, and you'll become a more confident manager, which I think is amazing. In certain cases, you will still need to consult an HR expert. Reading through a toolkit is not suddenly going to turn any of us into an HR specialist, but it will certainly grow our confidence and give us a resource that we know is accurate. So when we say toolkit, what does it look like? Let me just walk through a few screenshots. So as I mentioned, you can download this on the Grow ECD app, and you can screenshot this if you want to remember how to get there. You can go to the My Tools Resources section, and then in Resources, find Center Management, and that's under Business and Information Support. You will find the HR Toolkit. Oh, I was wondering that there were these screenshots. I think I forgot to put that in. So it's essentially a PDF document that you are downloading, beautifully designed, colorful, trying to make it not look like just boring written words, lots of copy. Pictures are included. There are graphics included. Examples are included. Tips are included. So we've really done our best to make it a practical and helpful and useful resource. I'll show it to you later in a little second. All right, so in the toolkit, one of the sections that Tracy mentioned was different types of employees and people working for your center. So Tracy, I think you should play a little game with us. You've prepared a little game with us to see. So everybody must please listen up, listen carefully, and let's see if we can get this challenge right.
Okay, so we would like you to give you different situations here, and we've got a number of characters in our HR toolkit. We've got Pelisa, who's the principal. We've got Rosina, who's a teacher. Then Jenny is a bookkeeper, and Aria is a volunteer. So let's just talk about these characters, and then you can actually guess who is what. Okay, so tell us who's an employee, who's an independent contractor, who is a volunteer. So Pelisa is the principal, and she's also the owner of the school. So that's just introducing the character who is in our toolkit. Throughout our toolkit, we're always talking about Pelisa. And then we've got Rosina, and she's a teacher at the Happy Apple ECD Center, and she's been working there for 2 years. And Jenny Hill is the bookkeeper who visits Pelisa's office once a month to help her with her books. So she comes there once a month to help her with her books. And then Aria is a lady who's really passionate and she wants to help at the center, and she comes in to help when she has some free time. So if you could just look at these characters of basically the three and say, well, which one would be, out of the 4 characters, which one would be the employer?
Ooh, I think that's Pelisa.
Okay, right, great. I think everybody knows that. Then who would be the volunteer?
See, oh, people said Pelisa. Who's the volunteer? Shanaz says Aria. Tumatu
Oh,
says Aria.
yes, yes,
Yes.
definitely Aria, yes. So
Volunteer.
everybody is wide awake this afternoon.
Yes.
And then who is the employee?
Employee. Employee. Lizette and Portia say Rosina.
Yes. Okay, yes, definitely
Yes.
Rosina.
Lots of Rosinas coming through.
Okay. And then who is an independent contractor?
Only leaves Jenny, our
Yes.
bookkeeper. Yes. Tasneem also says Jenny. Lindiwe says Jenny. Everybody here is
Okay,
very clever, wide awake.
there we go. So there's the
So,
answers, and everybody has done exactly. I think you all have a good understanding of who is what.
so Tracy, why is this important? I mean, why should I assess what type of service I'm getting? What does it affect?
Well, the fact of the matter is you need a different legal contract.
Mm.
So if you are an employee, you would need a contract of employment.
Mm.
And that employee could actually be a full-time or a part-time employee, but you do need a contract of employment. If you have an independent contractor, and sometimes people don't understand what an independent contractor is, they may feel, oh, I rather would like all my staff that work at I'm going to see I think they're all independent contractors, and I'm going to give them a service provider agreement. And then Janice would be the expert to say, well, when is somebody a service provider? But in most cases, if like Jenny, where she's often working for a number of other people, and she's just coming to the center. She's got her own little business, and she then has a service. She provides a service to the Happy Apple ECD, and there's a service provider agreement that Pelisa would actually sign with her. Because it may be that she still needs to sign an agreement because maybe Jenny has access to some confidential information, and you therefore want to make sure that Jenny understands that she cannot go and divulge any of that information anywhere else. So those are the sorts of things that you would, and also what her pay is and those sorts of things. And then your volunteer agreement, you still need to have an agreement for a volunteer, because it may just be that, you know, she needs to actually comply with certain policies in your center, or things like that. But you do need, and she needs to have an understanding, if she's a volunteer, that she's not going to get paid. So you do need to have that clear. And the main thing is everybody must have clarity around what are they going to be doing, what service are they providing, and what are their terms of agreement with the center.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. And then, so if you think sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I have 2 volunteers, I don't have a contract with them, don't worry, you don't have to spend your whole evening and weekend creating that contract. On the Grow app, you can download a template of a volunteer contract, a contract of employment for a permanent and a fixed term employee. And then you personalize those forms. It's in Word format, so you can personalize it with your center's name, details, and your own requirements and rules, right? Don't just use what we've got as is, personalize it to the way that your center wants to operate. Jessica, I see your question there. Jessica has a question, and she says at her special needs ECD center, she has a therapist who comes to her center. She's wondering if that is an independent contractor. Tracy or Janice, what do you think? What would that be a therapist who comes to my special needs ECD, or is that an independent contractor?
Jolene, yes, I think that would usually be an independent contractor, someone who's coming to deliver a service. There's an agreement between her and the ECD center for so many hours a week or a month, and she comes there to work with private clients, but in your facility.
Yes,
so
and
yes.
if she's providing, and also I guess in terms of depending on who pays her, if it's the parent who pays her, then she probably also needs an agreement with the parent. But if it's the center who pays her,
she would need an agreement with the center. Yes,
absolutely. All right, so we've already delved into a very practical topic, which you can find more about in the toolkit. Let's look at a few more questions. So Janice, Tracy helped us understand employees, but actually there are 3 types of employees. And I find many centers go straight for permanent employee, but there are actually 2 more types. Can you help us understand the three options?
Sure. So it's very simple once you get the names of them into your mind. So if we talk about a casual employee, I mean, if we think about the word casual, it means something that's not formal, doesn't it? It means something casual, like wearing slip-flops to the beach, for example. So a casual employee is someone who comes and delivers a wonderful service to you while she's there, but only for a very short time. And it has to be less than 24 hours in a month. The minute your casual people work more than 24 hours, then they become an employee. So you've got to watch those hours with your casual staff and make sure that you don't go over 24. And if you are needing to go over 24 quite often, then it's going to be better to engage with them in a contract of employment. Okay. So then a temporary employee is again self-explanatory, isn't it? It says, this employee works for me, but only on a temporary basis. And a temporary basis can be, and this is an important distinction to make in your mind, if you have an ECD that's open from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and you have someone who's working only for 5 hours each day, she's not temporary. She works every day, but only for 5 hours. So she's actually a more permanent employee. Temporary is when you have somebody coming for a fixed period of time. So let's say, for example, you are having a musical show for the parents, and you need somebody to help you with the practices for the concerts and setting up and cleaning up afterwards and managing the children and all the screeching and joy that will go with the concert of singing. Then you could take somebody just for that period of time, and you'd have a contract with her that says, you'll work for me from the 1st of August until the 31st of August only. That's a temporary employee. Okay. It can also be a longer period, such as when someone's away on maternity leave, or sometimes if someone who works for you permanently is very sick and can't come to work for maybe 2 or 3 months, maybe they've had a car accident, then you can take someone on temporary employment from one date to another date. Yeah.
That's very nice.
And
Thanks
then we
for
have,
sharing.
thank you, Ling. And there we have also the third kind of employee, which is what we call a permanent employee in this country. But really what that means is it's somebody who works for us every day with no end until either the employee wants to end it through resignation or the employer has to end it for one or other reason. Okay, so it's a permanent employment. And there, that doesn't mean that they have to work every day for the full hours. You can have someone who works much shorter hours or maybe only 3 days a week, but they work for you indefinitely without an end date. Okay.
Awesome.
Janet, could I ask a question here?
Sure.
How often can you renew a temporary contract?
So the law in South Africa is very clear, and that's a good question. Thank you, Tracy. So we can't use a temporary contract. We can't use a temporary contract to try somebody out, for example, to see if they're a good fit to our business. Okay, so if you need to fill a position and it's of an indefinite, a permanent nature, then we would use a clause in our contract that talks about probation. And your employee is permanently employed from day one. But if you need a temporary person, it has to be for a reason that is really and truly temporary. So a concert, a busy holiday creche or holiday club, filling in for somebody who's on maternity leave, those sorts of things. They have to have a start end and an end date. You can, if you take somebody on a temporary basis, and for whatever reason, the reason for the temporary employment continues, then you may extend it till the end of the next date. But it would not be a good idea to extend a contract more than once, because then we start talking about something under law where it's referenced as being a reasonable expectation of continued employment. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody?
That's good. Yeah, that's very, very good. Bianca Berger has a good question, and she says, are you required to contribute PAYE for an independent contractor or for someone on a fixed term contract? All right, so that's
Yes.
a good one.
So independent contractors, you would not usually need to pay tax or UIF. Independent people are people who have their own little business and they are working for you as a service provider. So you can think of it almost like if you have somebody who comes to your business to do your painting. They're independent contractors. They're painting the walls. They're not employed by you. They're coming to deliver a service. And an independent contractor is exactly the same. They pay then sort out their own tax. They'll invoice you every month, and they must keep themselves clean with the receiver of revenue, with SARS. But a temporary person, yes. A temporary employee has all the same rights as a permanent employee in the workplace, and they need to also be have their tax deducted and their UIF, and that needs to be paid over.
Excellent. And then I do see your question, Lindiwe, and someone else also asked a similar question. We're going to talk about minimum wage and what you should be paying people in just a few minutes. So hang on. So Janice, when it comes to a contract of employment, I'm sure you've seen many contracts across your desk. Tell us about one or two tips of what we should think about, make sure that we're including in our contract. And if you've seen any pitfalls or warnings that we should look out for.
Okay, sure. So the most important thing to remember is when you're writing a contract, whatever you write in there becomes the rule or the standard way of working with each other. And both the employer and the employee must do what's in there. So if you write a contract, you should always make sure that the contents are comfortable for you as well as for your employee. So for example, if your contract says, you must give me 1 term's notice, then you can't, as an employer, suddenly only give 1 week. You have to then also give 1 month, or 1 term. You understand that? I hope
Hmm.
everybody that's clear. So when concluding a contract, in summary, make sure that what's in there is easy for you and right for you to do, because it binds you and your employees.
Hmm.
So law is very clear around some things that have to be in our contract. And those things that have to be in there is the employee's full name, the employer's name, where the employee will do their work, how much you will pay them, what hours they will work, how you will give them leave, how you will end their employment, and how much notice is necessary to end. And then there are things that need a date that the employment starts on, and if it's a temporary contract, a date when it ends. And also very important is to include what the person's job title is going to be, and to have in that contract or attached to the back a description of what their job will be.
Absolutely. Because later,
Think,
if we're not
yes,
agreeing on it, then this contract will be what we're referring to, right? To see if I've done my
that's right.
job and
Yes, yes. It becomes your rules. It becomes the rules of how you work together. And the
Janice,
more,
can I make my own
yes,
rules, or are there some basic rules that I can't break?
no, they are very basic. They are basic rules, and you will probably all have guessed already that they come out of the Basic Conditions of Employment Act. And that act sets out the minimums we may or may not do within our businesses. You can always do something that's better than that. So if the Basic Conditions of Employment Act says, for example, you may not work more than 45 hours in a week, you can have someone who works only 20 hours, because that's better than 45. But you can't make someone work 50 or 60, because it then would be too much.
Excellent. And so for those of you who are stressing, thinking you need to write all of this down, remember that we have examples and templates of contracts of employment available on the app. You'll also see that we have 2 notes at the bottom for things that we think are unique to the contracts that you need in an ECD context. The first is that your employee should have their clearance certificate from the National Child Protection Register. And secondly, we highly recommend that you include a requirement around the Protection of Personal Information Act to make sure that employees understand their obligations in protecting and being sensitive to the children's information that they have access to. Okay, and we include that for you. I'm going to keep going because we have a lot to cover.
Leanne,
Go for
sorry,
it,
I just want to mention that what we also have in the HR toolkit is templates of job descriptions. So for teachers, teacher assistants, so you can edit those as well. But that will help you when you're doing your contract of employment, so that you can easily add that to your contract, as Janice says, as attached to your contract.
Yes, we have a template for a principal job description, teacher, a teacher assistant, and also for a cook cleaner. So again, don't spend your valuable weekend writing those. Let us help you. Okay, I'm aware of the time. We have so much that we want to cover, so we're going to keep going. One of the basic conditions of employment has to do with paid annual leave. Janice, explain this to us, please.
Right, so the Basic Conditions of Employment Act says that every employee in the business must, when they work a full week and they work indefinitely for you or for a period of a year or longer, that they must receive a minimum of 15 days of paid leave per year. And you'll sometimes get confused because people say, isn't it 21 days? And sometimes people think it's 21 because the Act talks about 21 consecutive days, which means days that follow each other. And that 21 counts in a weekend. But we don't usually work on weekends. Luckily, we all get a break. So 15 is the paid working days that you get per year. So another way of working this out is to say, if I have an employee who works by the hour, so she works maybe 3 hours a day, 4 hours a day, how do we work out the leave? It would be, you would take how many hours. So if she works 1 hour, you add them up, and she would get until they're 17. And then she receives an hour of leave. So after a month, if you've counted up how many days has Aria worked, or how many hours has Aria worked in this month, you would divide all of those hours by 17, and that would show you how many hours of leave she would get. Another way of doing it, which is a little bit easier, is saying, how many days did Aria work? So if Aria works a day, and we add them all up across the month, take that total, divide it by 17, that will tell us how many days of leave she has. And then you have to count it up. So every month, you should be saying, in this month, Aria has 1 day. In that month, she has 1 day. And you keep counting it so that you know how many days she's accrued, is the word. How many days have you accrued across your contract? And then you know how many days leave she can take. An important tip when counting leave days is that if someone takes a holiday, a leave, and somewhere in that leave period, there's a public holiday, then we don't count that day to deduct it from a leave balance. So let's say she took 8 working days, and one of those days was a public holiday, then we would take 7 days off her leave balance.
Absolutely. So that public holiday is a little freebie that we all receive. And I think this is very valuable because, Janice, it reminds me why it's so important to take daily staff attendance and keep attendance registers of when your staff are in the center, and also why they are not there. In fact, I think Tracy and I have seen 2 kind of different scenarios. One scenario is where your center is closed during the July and December school holidays, and that's more than 15 days a year. And the other scenario is where your center stays open, and that's less than 15 days a year. So, Tracy can maybe just talk to us through 1 or 2 suggestions for those. So let's say your center is closed for more than 15 days a year. What type of things, Tracy, should we think about when we're planning the leave with our staff in that case?
Okay, are you okay? So I think the important thing for many ECD centers is you've got to realize, because I've seen contracts in ECD centers that say no work, no pay, means no pay. And because I know for many centers, you know, you don't have parents that are paying in December, and therefore you're not paying your staff. But in essence, if you have, in terms of the basic conditions of employment and their contract of employment, they need, if they're working for a whole year, they need to receive a minimum of 15 days leave a year. So what you would need to do at least is in your contract, if you're in this situation, you would have to say, okay, well, okay, I need them, I'm going to be closed for 30 days. You may have to say, well, look, so many days of this 30 days is going to be paid leave, and the remaining days are going to be unpaid leave. That's one way. Sometimes you may actually say, well, actually, I'm getting my parents to pay for all of these months. So in that way, you actually land up giving your staff 30 days paid leave because you've actually got the income coming in for that. Okay. The other thing is that you can, you need to make sure with your employees that they understand that they can't take leave during the year, because if they're going to take leave during the year, it's going to have to be unpaid, or what's going to happen is they're not going to have enough paid leave when you are closed to cover that, and that's going to affect their pay. So it's very important that employees know how your leave is working and what is happening when your school is closed, and that they understand that and they have agreed to that in their contract, and that they obviously plan ahead. And so you just don't want a situation when an employee then goes off for a week or 2 for something during the year, and then when it's a shutdown, your shutdown period, because you're now closed for the holidays, they now sit without any pay because they've used all their paid leave. So that was the one scenario.
Yes, and then in the second scenario, I think Felicity Master, you mentioning your staff work throughout the year. Felicity, this is your scenario. So in this scenario, the center has decided to stay open for all the school holidays due to the parent demand. But staff members still need to have their 15 days of leave, right? So paid leave. So what solutions can we come up with here? What ideas do we have?
So one of the ideas is that you would need to keep a skeleton staff. You know, during holidays, you may not be running the full program like you normally do. It's more like a holiday program. So you could actually have skeleton staff. So you could look at your staff and you say, okay, I need you to work these holidays and the rest of the team will work on the other holidays. So then you don't have everybody taking leave at the same time. And in that way, they can plan their leave and they know, okay, I've got to take it for this. I'm able to take leave during these holidays, but I've got to actually make sure that I'm not going to be taking leave during those holidays because I actually have to work. And you make sure that you have a leave calendar for your staff to ensure there's fairness, that everybody gets an opportunity to take off.
Absolutely. And Bianca, you have a question around whether clinic appointments, where someone needs to take a full day off to visit the clinic, does that count as sick leave or as annual leave? I wonder, Janice, if you have a comment on that, maybe.
This is a question that is asked in industry all the time. And the legal answer is that no, an appointment for a checkup. So I'm not sick. I may be going to I've had a baby and now I'm at my 12 months or whatever checkup after the birth. That's not sick leave. It's actually annual leave. Sick leave is when you are sick so that you can't come to work. So if you're having a physio appointment because you broke your leg and now you're doing physio, you're not sick, but you're attending an appointment. So that is actually annual leave. But some places choose to make it sick leave so long as the person brings a sick note from the clinic. And you would then be able to do that, but you must do it the same for everybody. And you must have a rule that's clear that all of your employees understand.
Yes.
When am I sick and when am I on leave?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, that's very good advice. All right, let's get to another little nugget here, which is minimum wage. So Janice, walk us through this minimum wage example and tell us a little bit more.
Sure. So minimum wage was something that was introduced to obviously help our country grow past the years and years of its exploitation of workforce. And so it's actually a wonderful piece of legislation that we should all embrace and feel thankful for. But I understand that it is sometimes difficult for employers in small businesses to meet minimum wage. But what we do need to take away from here is that there is no reason that we can be excused, except if we get given an official exemption. So every single person who employs another person has to pay that minimum. Every March, they change that minimum rate. So you'd have to keep an eye on that for the Government Gazette. It comes out and it tells you what is the new minimum for the next year. At the moment, it's sitting at 27 Rand 58 for every hour that's worked. And you do have to pay at least that minimum. Exemptions can be applied for, but it's a tricky process. It's not impossible, but it is a tricky process. And if you need to apply, you may do so. There are guidelines on the internet to help you and forms to help you. But it's unlikely that you would be allowed to just pay any value. Usually there's about a 6% relief that is granted.
Yes. So, for example, I see in the chat, Lerato mentions that her ECD is still new, it's not yet registered, and she has about 4 children. So she doesn't make the minimum wage yet. So, Lerato, I'm assuming with 4 children, it's just you. And you're not employing anybody because you don't need 2 people, right, to take care of 4 children. And so I don't know if that's so you're basically, as the business owner, you're not paying yourself yet, but you can't employ someone and not pay them minimum wage. So let's walk through a really good example here. For example, Aria, she is working from 8 to 4. Monday to Friday, and she has 1 hour off for lunch, versus Rosina, who works 8 to 5, Monday to Friday, 1 hour off for lunch. So Janice, the 1 hour lunch break, is
Yes.
that not working hours? Are we not paying someone for their lunch break? Explain this to us a little bit.
So a lunch break is every employee must get a break of at least 60 minutes, an hour. Sometimes you can agree to reduce that to half an hour. But by law it should be be 1 hour, and that is unpaid time. So you take a break in your day for your lunch break, and it's not counted as an hour worked.
So that's why I
So
see
if you're there, yeah.
in the left-hand example, so I'm working 8 o'clock to 4 p.m. in the afternoon. That means 7 hours of work. Okay, great.
Yes. Yes.
And then we have a little tip for you here. If you want to calculate how much you should be paying someone for the month, remember that there are 4.33 weeks in a month. So pull out your calculators and let's show you this example. Help us to walk through this example, please, Janice, as we calculate the minimum wage.
So I just want to tell everyone quickly, the 4.33 is an average of the number of weeks per month over the 12 months, because some months have 4 weeks and others have 5. So it feels like a funny number, but it's the average across 12 months. So if we look at Aria's calculation, she earns 27 Rand 58, which is minimum per hour, and she works 7 hours a day. So you take her hourly rate times by the 7 hours that she works, is that 193 Rand and 6 cents, and that's how much she gets per day. You then would take that daily rate and times it by 5. Monday to Friday is 5 working days. So 1 day times 5 tells you what she earns for the week. That's at 963 Rand and 30 cents. And then now you know what she earns per week, you can times it by 4.33, and that will tell you how much to pay her every single month.
Excellent.
And the same for Rosina.
For Rosina, okay. And you may obviously, these are the basic conditions of employment act. So if I remember what you were saying, this is the basic, it's the minimum that we can provide, but you can also pay more if you want.
More. That's right.
So,
yes.
So Tracy, let's talk about this problem. How can you even meet the minimum wage requirements? If you're running a preschool, maybe you're charging 300 Rand per child. I mean, these numbers can look quite high for some centers. Help us with a few ideas and tips.
Okay. I think for many ECD centers, when we engage with ECD center owners, a lot of owners don't even think about how many hours, or they're not paying any staff member an hourly rate. They think of, I pay my teachers 2,000 Rand a month, or I pay my teacher assistants 1,500 Rand a month. And then you're sort of going, okay, well, how do we know if you're meeting the minimum wage? Because you need to understand, well, how many hours they're actually working a month. Because remember, we've told you now that the minimum wage is an hourly rate of 28. And so, and we sort of done this calculation now with Janice has done you, and you're showing, actually, if this person is now working 7 or 8 hours, 5 days a week, oh my word, I should be paying her 4,000 odd Rand, over 4,000 Rand, and not 2,000 Rand. And how on earth can I afford that? So I think we've sort of indicated a number of things. You need to really start to look at your hourly rate with your staff. You need to you rather should contract with your employees on what you pay them per hour. You also need to look at, do I need all my teachers and that? Do I need them to be there for the whole day? Maybe I only employ them so that I can afford it. I only employ them to work sort of mornings only. And in the afternoon, I have sort of more aftercare staff where I still have to pay the minimum wage there, but I don't have to have the person there for all those hours. So you make sure that you still have enough staff to cover the learners, but you may not need to have the teacher there all the time. So you've really got to think through that, because we find that a lot of centers have too many staff members often, and some centers have too many children for the number of staff. So the one thing is, don't employ more people than you need, Because sometimes I know that you're passionate, you're, like we said, and we know ECD center owners often have big hearts, and they often employ family members and, oh, you know, and another friend and all of that, but then they're not paying minimum wage, and this is where the problems come in. The other thing is that you need to charge fees that will help cover the minimum wage. And I know that that's a big issue for most ECD centers, because they'll say, well, if I'm charging fees, I can't, you know, in my area, I'm charging fees of, everybody's charging fees of 200 Rand, and I've only got 30 children. There's no ways with 30 children that I can afford to pay the minimum wage for 200 Rand. Now, obviously, if you're getting a subsidy, it gives you a little bit more income. But the problem is that we need to start looking, you need to start looking at your ECD center more as a business, and you need to be looking at in order to pay a minimum wage to your employees, you need to start making sure that your costs for your business are covered by what's coming into your business, and that is something, your fees. And the other thing is, what we've suggested is you're planning your staff hours better. Like we're saying, just don't have people working there the full day. Rather, they reduce their hours so that you can at least, you can still afford it, and back pay minimum wage.
Yes. So it really is this balancing act between, you need to look at legally, you need to pay people minimum wage. So, but at the same time, also there are registration requirements and best practice for how many adults you need per child. So both of these need to happen at the same time. You can't also just have 40 children and one teacher. And then you're thinking, oh, that's great because now I can pay minimum wage. But now you're actually not providing good quality care for children, because there are also requirements and rules around how many teachers there should be per age group, per number of learners. So both these things have to happen at the same time. And you can see that's why Grow is really passionate about that. We need to develop our head for business while never losing our commitment to providing quality education for children. And your center will be on a journey, and it won't happen overnight. It's a journey towards meeting all of these requirements. And we're just looking at the time, and I see that we don't have much time left. So I wanted to mention that we have a lot of amazing downloads on the app. Oh, we haven't even discussed misconduct and incapacity. I'm sure we could talk another hour on this. If you are also struggling with employees who break the rules or breach your policies, or who behave in an unacceptable or improper manner, or if you have an employee who's unable to perform their role, who's simply not doing the job really well, the HR Toolkit provides a really good overview on what the difference is between misconduct and incapacity, and also the processes and suggestions for how to deal with each of those. Maybe that's a whole nother webinar that we need to host at one point.
Yes.
But with only 5 minutes left, I want to just come back here to the sheet that explains how to download the toolkit. And I want to encourage you, if you weren't able to ask some of your questions, this webinar is being live streamed to the Grow ECD Facebook page. So come onto the Facebook page of Grow ECD, find the webinar, you'll see the video rolling there. And in the comment section, add your comments and your questions. We'll do our best to come back to you and reply to some of the questions that people have. Also read through those questions and comments, and you'll see that many other people have the same questions, and we can help each other. Also read through the toolkit. Maybe print it out for yourself, download it on your phone, read through it, and get some more information and knowledge and empower yourself. Other than that, if today's webinar has made you think, yeah, I really need to develop my head for business more, how can Grow help you? Okay, so you can take a screenshot of this page. You can reach out to our WhatsApp help desk. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, where we have many other webinar recordings. The place to start is by using the free Giraffe app if you're a center owner. On there, you can assess your teachers professionally and have a performance discussion with them. You can assess your learners. You can manage your administration. You can take staff attendance. Those are just a few of the features in there. This app really is your one-stop shop. It's like your school in your phone. And the app help desk will help you to understand how to use this app, how to access it, and how to use it well. The other thing that I can highly recommend is in the app, there is amazing online training, okay? And based on what you think you need, go and do one of the online training programs. Maybe it's budgeting or marketing or registration, and you can develop yourself further. And then the final thing I would highly, highly recommend is our ECD Small Business Accelerator. We have our last accelerator for the year, starting in September, I think. This is our final cohort for the year. We'll only have a next one in 2025. So if you want to start 2025 with the confidence and the skills and the mindset you need, I highly recommend you sign up for the accelerator. It's a 6-part training course hosted over 6 weeks, so 1 day a week. And we teach you about how to think like a social entrepreneur, how to take control of your money, how to run your preschool like a business, how to deliver quality education that meets the NCF requirements and will have all your children glowing and ready for grade R, and how to meet the registration requirements. And we host that in Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and Gqeberha. It's only 600 Rand, and there are only 25 seats per region. All right, so please sign up for that, pay to book your seat, and we'd love to see you there. Other than that, download the HR Toolkit and stay in contact with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts and suggestions, and we're always thinking about how we can make your life easier so that you can get back to what you love doing, right? Get out of the boardroom, get out of the meeting room, get out of the office and back into the center with the children, the teachers, the parents, and doing the work that you love. Thank you very much. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Tracy, for amazing support. Janice,
it was lovely being here.
Final thoughts from your side, Janice, words of encouragement.
Yes, so I think you shouldn't be afraid. Don't be afraid to try the things and to bring your business to where it needs to be. You can make a list of the things that you think you need to change. Do I need contracts? Do I need job descriptions? Have I got a way of managing my leave? Make a list and then start at the top and tackle one thing at a time. Don't try and do everything all at once. And once you've got one thing done, you'll feel so proud and ready. You'll be raring to move on to the next one. One thing at a time.
Wise words, wise words. Thank you, everyone. God bless. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.